The American voters have spoken, and the message they're sending is loud and clear. They are not happy with the Obama administration or Democrats in general. And the change they were promised 2 years ago, well, they say it hasn't happened yet. So can the Republicans now deliver it? The voters speak right now on It's Your Call. Our American government is moving in a new direction. Thanks to the results of the midterm elections, Republicans have now taken back control of the House and gained seats in the Senate. But even though the voters sent a message that they're not happy with the way things have been, can change really happen now in Washington? We'll ask our political experts. They include old friends of the show, Renee Amore, the deputy chair of the Pennsylvania Republican State Committee, and Brad Brewster, a political analyst and a Republican strategist. And representing the Democrats, also old friends, Tony Wiedemann comes back. He's a political campaign expert and is joined by Tara Dell, a political strategist. It's great to have everybody with us. I'm Lynn Doyle, and as always, it's great to have you with us. We're going to invite you to tell us what you think about the results of the election, whether it's on a national or on a local level. How you do that? You answer these questions. Are you pleased or disappointed with our results? Can the Republicans achieve what the Democrats have not in the last 2 years? Or do you think there's just going to be more political infighting and no progress whatsoever? If you want to tell us what you think, you can email me right now directly at lynn@lynndoyle.net. You can also find me on Facebook, MySpace, and of course on YouTube. First, though, we got to get reaction from the GOP reps about the national sweep by the Republican Party. For that, I'm going to turn to my old friend Renee. I know it was a lot of work, certainly for you, worth it. But were you even surprised?
You know what? Really, we weren't surprised. We worked very hard on the national level. We were out there, many of us went to like 20 states, in several weeks just to get people going, to let them know who we are and what we're about. The Republicans branded themselves this time in a different way that we've never had before.
Do you think it's as a result of the Republicans branding themselves, as you say, or that there was just a general dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party?
I think it's both. I think there was dissatisfaction, but also our branding too, and our message. A lot of times it's not the message, but it's the messenger also, and that's what happened.
Let's talk about the so-called messenger. Of course, looking at it from a Democratic perspective, Tony, what do you take away from it? What did the voters say to you?
Well, I think what the voters said to us and what's out there in the country is that they were dissatisfied, and it wasn't with either party. It was on issues, and when they came out on issues, and seniors came out on an issue, and independents came out on an issue, and they came out on the economy, and it was a misstep and a miscalculation, and it'll be a misstep and a miscalculation by the Republicans if they think this is a mandate going down to Washington, because I think the misstep from Obama was that he's going to take his popularity for a ride, and he did it with health care, and the people were saying it was about the economy, they were saying about the economy, and he was talking about health care. That paid dividends for the Republicans in this election cycle.
My eyebrows raised when he just said it wasn't so much about the party, but about issues. Do you agree with that, or do you think that it was specifically about the parties?
Well, I don't want to parse that. I'm not sure if it was about the party or about the issues, but I can tell you that in 2008, the Democrats ran as, we're not George Bush. In 2010, they ran as Democrats. They ran as liberal Democrats, unlimited government Democrats, and that was clearly rejected.
Tara, you were with us when President Obama made history in this country and were, behind him all the way with the "we can make change happen." Where do you think he's faltered? Because even he admitted immediately after the election that he was disappointed with his influence.
Well, I think one of the major areas where the president faltered was in terms of his messaging and the way he communicated his priorities to the people. He was an excellent communicator during the campaign. He really struck a chord with people, obviously considering the coalition that he formed, and many under that coalition weren't even traditionally aligned with the Democratic Party. But what the president did was he didn't do enough to show empathy about what was going on. He inherited a mess. There's no question about that. And people recognize that, but I think he needed to be more outspoken about the fact that he was going to stand by the American people and ride this out, and show that he understood people were frustrated.
I actually think he came across as a whiner during the campaign.
Absolutely.
To be honest with you, I just think it was all, as good a communicator as he was in 2008. It was all about, and I know this was their message, it was about, we don't want to return, drive the car back in the ditch kind of thing. And I don't think he can win in that. Now, a lot of trade wins, I think we'd all agree, a lot of headwinds rather, in terms of of the economy,
Right.
but they didn't help themselves with issues, and they really overreached. And I think we are at the end of the day, very central as a group, and those who win elections really get to the center. And he certainly was not at the center.
I think, Brett, I agree with you. I think that those arguments would have, him driving the car into the ditch, him pushing the car into the ditch, would have worked on a premise if he started off in the beginning and said, by the way, this is how bad the economy is. And I understand why he didn't do that because, and I always said this about both parties in the 2008 elections, that they both talked the economy down. And so did the media. They said how bad it was, and it made businesses cringe up with their money. But I think that if he would have said, this is how bad it is, this is the solution, and guess what? It's going to take 4 years or 5 years to get out.
Right.
And he never did that. And I think there was a miscalculation by him. So I think those arguments would have held if he would have said, this is the problem, and this is how we're getting out of it, and then said that. Because when he said get out of the ditch, we're in the ditch, but everybody said, when?
Right. Well, in fact, the
how?
editorials in the days following the election pointed out that they thought perhaps President Obama tried to do too much too soon in an effort to promise the change that so many people voted for in 2008. What does it say, though, about him from a Republican perspective that he, in fact, seemed to hurt some of his candidates, particularly even in his home state of Illinois, where a Republican took his seat? That's really gotta hurt.
The bottom line is people really wanted to deal with, I need a job. I need a house, all those things. They weren't dealing with the health care right away. He did do too many things at once, topped on piled each other. And the communication was not good to the grassroots folks. Folks need to be held, TLC. That's the bottom line. That's human nature. He wasn't given that. So I definitely agree with you. It's all about the communication and how you communicate. And he was whining. And it was like a poor me type thing. And you got to move on from that and give people what they need to hear.
It's so funny because his strength as a communicator is one of the things for which he was most admired by both parties when we were covering the election a couple of years ago. Was this also a referendum on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi? Let's not blame it completely on the president.
I don't think so, because I'll tell you what, no matter where I go in the country, Republicans always use the argument, whether it was a former boss of mine, Speaker Foley, or it's Nancy Pelosi or Dick Gephardt. Common folks don't know who they are. They barely know who their congressman is. Those arguments don't hold weight. But what do is when I talked about party versus issue is that these folks want to do this with that issue. And that's what resonated with the health care and the jobs. That resonated.
But I guess, Tara, what I mean is that in all of these political ads leading up to Election Day, we kept seeing candidates being aligned, at least by their opponent, with her or voting for the president's bailout. When they were trying to get the message across that, hey, the Republicans will do something differently, it seemed like they did use those two as kind of fall guys, much like the Democrats did by aligning candidates with President Bush.
That's right.
Well, Nancy Pelosi, even though I think she will go down in history as a very effective and active speaker who did a very good job from a legislative standpoint, but she is a polarizing figure, and the Republican Party recognized that. And what the party did was they used Nancy Pelosi much in the same way Democrats use Sarah Palin, because Nancy Pelosi does gin up the activist segment of the Republican base.
I'm so glad you used that word.
And energizes them. And Sarah Palin does the same thing, even though I think Nancy Pelosi is a far more intelligent and effective person, but Nancy Pelosi does the same thing in the way that Sarah Palin does it for Democrats.
I'm so glad that you used the word polarizing, because that segues me right into Sarah Palin. A lot of people said that this was kind of a test of her political clout, and yet she proved to be a polarizing figure within the GOP. So is she the best thing that ever happened to you guys, or the worst?
No, I think she's certainly a good thing, and she certainly was the face of the Tea Party. You used the word that Republicans branded themselves. They really rebranded themselves.
Okay.
Tea Party absolutely was what was sort of a shot of Red Bull in terms of energizing the base.
Way to bring it full circle there. I got to take a quick break, Brad, but I want you to continue that school of thought about the Tea Party and the Republicans branding themselves, because that's one of the ways that the voters spoke during this particular election. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to find out what you have to say about the election, and we'll see what our panel says about the country and what it means for us moving forward. Stay with us.